So this is our website so far, and we want to go ahead and dress it up a little bit. We want to go ahead and give this a logo and put it up here in the header section. So we have a picture file for that called sandwich.jpg. And if I go ahead and copy that to make sure I have the exact one I want, then I can go into our HTML and say, well, in front of the H1 tag, let's go ahead and put an image in there. And again, I just type in img and then tab, and then tell it what the file name is. So I'll go ahead and paste that in. All right. And then I'll go ahead and put an alt tag in, equals sandwich logo. Okay, then I'll go ahead and file and save. And then I'll go ahead and refresh the page and see how it looks. Whoa. Okay, so we have some problems. One is the image is centering itself because that is what our default setting is. And it's shoving down our logo here. So really what we want when this thing being shoved over to the left, and we'd like to have this brought up next to it. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that. Let's go ahead and go back to our Sublime. And we have to go in and do in our header. So we have a header for our H1 already. So let's go ahead and put our image. Let's move up, in fact. And H1 is next to or below our image. So let's go ahead and put our image ones here. So I'm going to say in my header, I want you to style the image, and let's go ahead and do, let's display it as a block, and that will shove it over because it's going to start taking up the entire header. So let's go ahead and try that. So we'll do display block, because remember an image tag is an inline element, so it doesn't take up space. But if we turn it into a block, then it will take up space. So let's do file and save. And let's go back to our page and refresh. And bam. Okay, well, better. It shoved it to the left, but it didn't bring this up. And why didn't it do that? Well, it's a block element, so as far as H1 is concerned, it's taken up that entire space, and it can't fit there because that's there. So let's try doing something. Let's try going back, and maybe we can go into our H1 and let's tell it to float to the left and see if that works. So we'll do float. Oops. Yeah, float and left. And we'll do file and save. And then we'll go back and refresh the page and see if that. Whoa. Okay, so that was not the way to go. So when we float it to the left, what it's done is now it's taken our navigation, which is also floating, and said, well, if that's floating left, then let's go ahead, and this has to be to the right of it. So that really hosed up our page. So that obviously cannot be the right way to go. But it gives you an understanding of floats and blocks of how it all works. So we're going to get rid of this one. And I'm going to cut it out because that wasn't what I should have done. But how about if I take my image and I float that to the left? Let's see what happens then. And then we'll do file and save. Well, let's go ahead and leave it the way it is. We'll do block and float it to the left and see what happens then. All right, so refresh. Okay, that fixed everything. Oh, but look what happens. Okay, it's a little bit off. One of the problems is that our picture size is not right. So our picture, this is floating up to the left, so that's exactly what we wanted it to do. But the other thing, we wonder, do we really need to float it and to block it? So let's go back to here, and let's go ahead and comment out this block. So I'm going to select it, hold down my control key, and press the slash, which is underneath the question mark. that automatically comments it out. Now it's not as if it's not there. Let's do File and Save, and then refresh. All right, so we got rid of the block and nothing changed. We really didn't need to make this into a block element. What we really wanted to say was float yourself over to the left, and then this will automatically then take up the rest of the space in it, because as far as this block element is concerned, it doesn't even see that there's an image there. As far as it's concerned, it's along the left margin. The other problem we have is that the size isn't quite right. So let's go ahead and change the size. Okay, so for our image, we can leave it floating to the left, and we can leave this up here. Doesn't need to be a block. So we can leave that and say, well, why did we put that there? That might be a good reminder later on when you're perhaps going back and taking a look at this and saying, all right, how did I move that image over? Okay, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do, let's do width 200 pixels. Remember, that is 200 pixels is what our nav is, so we want to have it lined up with that. So let's do File and Save, and let's go back and take a look at our page now. Whoa, okay, so now it's hosted up again, but look what happened. You can see that because we expanded it by 100 pixels, it also made it longer. So it shoved this thing out of the way. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and say, well, let's make this the same width as the navigation, but also make it the same height as our header, so it fits in there nicely. So let's go back and then say, okay, well, let's do then height and make that 100 pixels. And let's do File and Save, and then refresh. Okay, wow, much better. You can see that you have to really understand what happens when you change things from inline into block, and what happens when you change things into floats. When they float, they're floating around, and something can actually bang it out of whack, which is what happened here. So now we've learned how to be able to put a picture in, how to be able to configure that picture within our header, and also the difference between floating things and blocking things. Sometimes block doesn't work. Even if we try floating, then it causes all sorts of other things. And that's why you have to be careful of what you're floating. Don't float unless you have to, because again, float then changes the way that it pushes on the elements around it, because it's actually as if it's floating or on the page. All right, that's it.